Hello and welcome back to another Game Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking another look at Tekken 3, released in 1997 on the Namco System 12 hardware. This time I'm actually going to be playing as a different character, Jin Kazama. And just like in my Ling Xiaoyu gameplay, I actually pressed start when I picked him, and I picked his school outfit, which... this is another one of those bonus costumes that's unlocked in the time release of the arcade game after certain conditions are met. And this was just actually one of those gameplays where I was thinking to myself, why don't I try playing as a different new Tekken character in the game? And I just happened to pick Jin, and I was thinking, I'll give it a try, I'm not going to be too great. I ended up doing fairly well in this gameplay, a little bit better than Ling Xiaoyu, but not perfect by any means. Like, I can look at my video right now and I see a lot less edit points. As like with most of my arcade videos, I edited out all the losses. If you really want to see how well I did, just keep an eye on that time at the top of the screen, and that will tell you how well I did. But I thought the reason why I would do a few gameplays of Tekken 3 this time around is because it'll give you a better look at a lot more of these stages, since, like in my Fighting Layer videos, not every arcade gameplay you play of one of these games are you going to get like every character, or are you going to get every stage. So it just gives you like a look like at different stages. Like for instance, Nina Williams wasn't seen in the Ling Xiaoyu video, but in this video she's seen as well, and I can also reveal that Gunjack, I believe, was seen in this video, or he might be seen in another one of the videos in this series. But that's the cool part about playing a lot of these games, is that you'll get different characters based off of the different gameplays, but it's not like it has anything to do with who you pick, as what characters are available in arcade mode are actually just random characters. Except for, of course, Heihachi, Ogre, and True Ogre. They're the only ones that are constant in the game. The rest of them are just randomly peppered in, but in all the gameplays I did, Julia Chang always appeared at some point in the order. Be it right before Heihachi or a couple of spots before. And now this is the alternate Yoshimitsu outfit that the AI is using, and honestly I don't like it too much. And that's the funny part with most of the Tekken games. There's always like a Yoshimitsu outfit that I don't like, and I just think it looks silly. Like this one, he looks kind of like a knight or a robot, whereas his like classic costume, which is the one in his portrait, I like that a lot more, and I think it's more basically, it's the picture of what I think of when I think of Yoshimitsu from Tekken and Soul Calibur. And it's that costume that I always gravitate toward if it's available. But also, you didn't end up seeing Yoshimitsu in the Ling Xiaoyu video as well. And now, just as you remember seeing in the Ling Xiaoyu video, you'll see that Kuma's portrait was still displayed when you fight Panda, but it still shows up as Panda, which is the cool thing. But from what I understand, all the moves of Panda are exactly the same as Kuma, so if you know how to play as Kuma, you can play as Panda. But the funny thing is that the Kuma in this game apparently is not the Kuma from the original games. It's actually, as they call it, Kuma 2, which is the son of the original Kuma, also serving as Heihachi's loyal pet and bodyguard. And the same thing goes with King. It's the successor of the original King, who participates to serve his predecessor's orphanage after the original King is killed by Ogre. So, as I'd mentioned in some of my other videos, since this game takes place 20 years after the original games, they are many different characters in this game, with the only returning characters being Paul Phoenix, Yoshimitsu, Nina Williams, Lei Wulong, Heihachi Mishima, and Anna Williams, whereas everyone else is either like a descendant of the original character, a daughter or son of the original character, or an entirely brand new character such as Eddie Gordo or Brian Fury. But of course they're like kind of based off of the original characters. So like for instance, you'll have characters that are kind of like influenced by another character and they like serve like similar moves. And as I had mentioned with Law here, this is Forrest Law, who is the son of Marshall Law. And if you didn't see my Ling Xiao Yu video, a quick bit of knowledge on the hardware here. The Namco System 12 hardware is basically like kind of like a beefed up PlayStation 1 spec, whereas the System 11 hardware that Tekken 1, 2, and Soul Edge ran on was a 100% standard PlayStation spec with no differences. That's why if you look at this version of the game compared to the PlayStation version, you have many 3D elements in the backgrounds that were completely flat on PlayStation, because since this game ran on a much faster, much enhanced PlayStation spec, the character models and the backgrounds look a lot better, which unfortunately did have to take a little bit of a downgrade for that console version of this game. But mind you, this game still plays really well, regardless of a downgrade in graphics when it comes to the Sony PlayStation version. It's still a really good version, but this version just ends up looking a lot better due to that enhancement of the Namco System 12 board. And as you can see, like when you're looking in the background, like that pillar that's kind of like floating in the background, that's a full 3D element, not just like a flat thing. So that kind of gives the background a little bit more depth, and it doesn't look like you're just fighting in front of a painting. But as I had made mention of, it seems like regardless of how random the characters were, Julia Chang always ended up showing up in all of my gameplays of this game, and she always ended up giving me at least a little bit of a hard time when I fought her. So if you look carefully at that time, you'll notice that it went up a decent amount when I would face her. Final round, fight. Because I definitely have to say, she is definitely a harder character, and the later you put her in the game, the more difficult she ends up being. So it's one of those characters that the more difficulty you add to them, of course the harder they are going to be to defeat. And now, in America, this game ran on like your standard upright cabinet. Usually they like would pop it into like a Tekken cabinet. Sometimes they give it its own dedicated. But in Japan, of course, the Cyber League cabinet was utilized, as that was the go-to cabinet for many of Namco's games. And now Gunjack here is like the next in the Jack series, compared to like the older Jack robot and even Prototype Jack. He's just kind of like a different version of the Jack robot. Although I can honestly say, as far as characters, the Jack robots kind of fight similar, and they have similar fighting moves. And they can all be pretty difficult, and at least this was before they decided to make his like head and his fists ginormous and make him look like a cartoon character. But I guess that was kind of an attempt to make him look more like a robot and less like an actual weird person wearing like Metal Gear. Because that's what he ended up looking like in the earlier games. He's like a guy with like metal fists, or in this case, like wearing like a weird bodysuit with like boots and gloves. And they always seem to make that like that like very weird grunt when they die.
Round 1. Fight.
And now here, of course, is the grandson fighting the grandfather, Heihachi versus Jin. And now a lot of the moves they do are fairly similar, but they're not like exactly the same. I definitely have to say, when it comes to like Jin's fighting style, a lot of the more dynamic moves I feel really got added when it came to like Tekken 5, because he ended up having a lot of real cool moves. And then of course they took it one step further in Tekken 5 with the character of Devil Jin, who ended up having some really crazy moves. But I definitely have to say, with a lot of Jin Mishima's, or actually Jin Kazama's moves, he actually has some really hard-hitting moves and some really like harder moves for the AI to like avoid. So overall, playing with him was a little bit easier than Ling Xiaoyu, but I probably just end up having to get better as Ling Xiaoyu.
Round 1. Fight.
And now, of course, just like all of my gameplays, here comes Ogre and True Ogre, which I really didn't have any sorts of like terrible difficulty with. And now watch here for the glitched movie. I don't know why it does this. Watch. The funny thing there is Heihachi's body actually glitches behind Ogre there instead of him actually holding it. It was actually behind him, and I thought that was so weird when I saw that. I was like, oh wow, it's glitching. I hope the game doesn't somehow lock up or crash or something, but luckily it did not. And I don't know if I mentioned it in my other videos, but of course Tekken 3 here runs in standard resolution and medium resolution, depending on if you're hooking it up via JAMA or JBS. And yeah, it's just a very nice looking game, especially on the arcade hardware here, which was a bit better looking than the PlayStation version just due to that extra horsepower that this hardware had. And I definitely recommend, if you can track down an arcade cabinet, or that arcade history mode in Tekken 5 is actually pretty good for this game. Or of course, if all you can play is it on MAME or even the PlayStation version, Tekken 3 is an excellent game that I do highly recommend in this series of games. And it's a very fun game to play due to all the different characters you have access to, including like past and present characters, and new characters alike. And the funny thing is, this game apparently was even included on that PlayStation Classic console that had failed so horribly in December of 2018. But that's enough of that. This has been another Game Nexus arcade video, and I shall see you later. Bye.